Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome from the Council of Bears. And the message of the Council of Bears is insist on world peace. This aggression will not stand, dude. Well, welcome once again to my sanctum, place where I go to isolate. And I don't just come up here to isolate from from the Chewbacca. I've been coming up here to isolate myself from the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune for years and years and years. I feel safe here. I feel happy here for the most part, especially when I get to talk to you. Okay, so just a quick message for you from real life before I launch into episode 10. First thing I wanted to share with you is that that's the little finger that got operated on, and I've just about recovered just about 100% of the full range of motion in that finger, and I can play the guitar again, and I can play the keyboards. So music is coming. New music is coming. The second thing is that, as I've mentioned before, I was stuck with 4 or 5 subscribers on my YouTube channel for years and years and years. I think I've had that channel for about 9 years, and the most subscribers I ever had was 4. And since I started telling this Vietnam story, well, first I went to 20 subscribers, and then I had 88 subscribers a couple days ago, and then it was 92 subscribers, and I go, oh my gosh, I'm on my way to 100 subscribers. Well, D9 Danny Wilson mentioned me in his stream today, and I currently have 103 subscribers, which is kind of mind-boggling to me. And I'll try and make these episodes especially entertaining because I know there's more people watching. Oh, and speaking of watching, my average view time on these videos is about 15 minutes, which means, some people just come and then go quickly when they discovered how unattractive I can be. But a lot of people are staying. They're coming in at the beginning and staying to the end. And I hope that you will do that and that you will enjoy it. And that you will, if you really enjoy it, that you'll press the like button. And if you really, really enjoy it, that you'll subscribe to the channel. And if you really, really, really like it, that you'll encourage your friends to come and subscribe also. Well, here we go. This is episode 10. And, I was talking to my wife, Jane, about producing these videos. And she said, well, don't bury the lead. Don't bury the lead. And, this is episode 10 in the true story of how I became the all-American boy. And this is where we bury the lead. Because the most remarkable thing about my service in Vietnam, at least to me, is what happens in episode 10. And I mentioned being down on the flight line after the rain. And the sky was cloudy, but it was opening up. And I see this fella, it's like a movie scene. He is 50 or 60 yards away. And he's not just walking, he's sauntering. Swaggering, maybe is a better word. But he's walking up toward me at the 281st Supply Shack. And I take a closer look at this guy. And he's got spit shine boots and a starch-pressed uniform, a green fatigue uniform, but it is sharp. He is sharp. Tailored uniform. And he's wearing love beads. Love beads. And he gets a little closer, and I notice his hair is about as long as my hair is now. And I go, dude, what are you doing? So he comes up close enough to me. And I said, excuse me, but who are you? And what the hell are you doing on my flight line? As if to say, I'm in some authority in that flight. Well, forget that. Well, it turns out that the fellow is playing lead guitar in a rock and roll band that's touring Vietnam for the Special Services. Now, Special Services is not Special Forces. Special Services is the branch of the Army that provides entertainment and morale building to the troops in Vietnam. And what they were doing was recruiting Army volunteers to play in pickup bands and travel around Vietnam and entertain the troops in places that are too small and far too dangerous to send Bob Hope and his entourage or any other special forces USO bands. Couldn't send them in places. So I said, dude, I play guitar. Do you think I could get a job with them? And he says, well, if you're any good, you probably could. I said, well, how did you get the job? He says, I got a phone number in Saigon. And he shared that. He must have been short getting ready to go back to the States because he shared that number with me, but no big thing. And I called the number and I talked to a gentleman. I wish I could remember his name right now. It looked like a turtle. I really did, with a bald head. And I didn't know that at the time, but I met him later. So I said, I play the guitar and I met so-and-so. And he said that if I called you, I might be able to get a gig playing guitar. And he says, well, are you any good? I said, well, good enough that I was making my living playing the guitar before I got drafted. And he says, well, you sound like you're our boy. And you get permission from your commanding officer, and we'll cut you some, what they call them, TDY, that's temporary duty assignment, send you some papers. And so I went to my commanding officer, and Colonel Ruskoff had rotated back to the States, and his job was taken over by Colonel Miller. And Colonel Miller didn't know me from Adam. I'd always been in the field ever since he took off or took over. And he said, well, I can't let you go. I can't let you go without being able to cover that job. And I said, but Colonel Miller, my replacement is a guy named Denogus Theory, and he got here last week. He's a little early, yeah, but, I get out of here pretty soon. I'm short. And Denogus Theory is here, and please let me go and audition. He said, okay. And he let me go, and sure enough, here comes my temporary duty papers, and I go down to the Air Force flight line, and I show them my TDY orders to go to Saigon, and I flew into Tan Son Nhut Air Base on the General's airplane, and the General's airplane, I believe, was a Beechcraft Bonanza. It was a twin-engine turboprop. It was so luxurious. It had leather seats and was air conditioned. It was beautiful airplane. And I got to ride on it all the way down to Saigon. Got off the plane in Saigon, and they I got there fairly early in the day, and along about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they finally sent a driver over to Tanzania to pick me up. And anyhow, the excitement began right away because the fellow that they sent me down, or sent down to pick me up, he lived with the other special forces guys in a hotel just 2 blocks down the street from the special services headquarters, and took me there. And first we went up onto the rooftop cafe and had a lovely dinner. I think hamburgers and baked beans or something like that. And we sat on this balcony, smoking cigarettes, watching Saigon at night, and it was really pretty. We went from there up to the roof of the hotel where we were staying. Now, I believe that it was the St. George Hotel. There was a lot. It was a big hotel that the Army had taken over, and they had a lot of people housed there. But up on the roof, you could see all the way across town to Tanzania, and we're up there on the roof. And naturally, being musicians, we're smoking pot, and crunch, crunch. So anyhow, we could sit there and watch the rockets flying into Tanzania airfield. I'm going, holy mackerel! Yeah, don't worry, that happens all the time. They never shoot down here. So anyhow, the next morning, I met the Turtle Man. Wish I could remember his name, but I met him, and I told him that I had played guitar in this band called the Mosaic Virus in Washington, and that I told him about the different kinds of music that I liked, but that I prided myself in being able to play most any style that was required, because we were there to entertain people. He said, okay, and so we went down to the assembly room, and the assembly room, if I had to equate it to something that I'd seen recently, there was a show on TV called Hitsville, and it was about Berry Gordy and Motown Records, and how they had all of these musicians just sitting around waiting for the tune to arrive, and then they would just put together these arrangements and start practicing to make a record. Well, they weren't making any records there in Saigon, but they had some damn fine musicians. I mean, really good musicians that, I thought I could play the guitar, but I didn't know any of those jazz chords like those guys. And I was, I was put in my place is what it was. And anyhow, it started jamming. I jumped in, I started jamming, and apparently I'm overplaying, because the bass player leans over to me and says, hey man, we know you can play. Chill out. I guess I was overplaying, trying to impress the crew. But when I started playing to support the song instead of demonstrating that I could play, it was better. And dude, I didn't realize that was my audition, but that was my audition, and I passed the test. Hurrah! And so with that, I flew back to Nha Trang, and I got my guitar, and got my duffel bag with some clothes in it, and flew back to Saigon. And in Saigon, they gave us 3 weeks. And in 3 weeks, we met, it was 5 total strangers that they brought us into this room. And he said, okay, you're the drummer, you're the singer, you're the sax player, you're the, introduced us. And we started trying to figure out what we knew, what we could play together. And the fellow that they had picked to play bass and saxophone, and the fellow that they picked to be the lead singer, these were both black guys from Tennessee. The bass player was from not Nashville, but Memphis, and he really could play. He was an excellent, soulful saxophone player. And when he played sax, I would double his bass part on the guitar. It was all cool. It was cool. It worked. And as I recall, the very first song that we started playing together was one that I initiated, that the singer knew, by Rufus Thomas, called "Walking the Dog." Hey, walking the dog. If you don't know how to do it, I'll show you how to walk the dog. My. So anyhow, we had 3 weeks to put together a 2-hour show, that was easy. So he spent a lot of time up on the roof of the St. George Hotel, smoking a lot of weed and telling a lot of lies. The fellow that was in charge, the fellow that came to pick me up at the airport, he claimed that he was like an assistant director on the movie Billy Budd. And the movie Billy Budd, that was a big ticket item. Well, anyhow, he said he was from Hollywood. He couldn't wait for his military service to be over because he was going to go and star in movies. He was going to be a movie star. And I figured, okay, well, you'll have to battle with Jack Petty to fight off the girls. Jack was my buddy back at the 281st. It reminded me of Errol Flynn so much. Well, we put these songs together, and it was fun. It was a good band. Well, not a great band, but I loved playing, and I loved the guitar they gave me to play. They gave me a Gibson Thunderbird, Thunderbird was the bass. He gave me a Firebird, a non-reverse Firebird, and it had some pretty stiff action. It wasn't the best Gibson guitar I'd ever played, but it did the job. And so most of the tunes that we played were soul tunes, to accommodate our lead singer. And maybe what I'll do is I'll gather my memories together and see if I can come up with a set list of what we played. Well, before we knew it, the 3 weeks was over, and we were getting ready to deploy to go on our show. And so we loaded up our gear in the back of a Deuce and a Half, all of our guitars and amplifiers and duffel bags and associated stuff, and went down to Tonsanut to fly to our first concert. And there was a guy from CBS, a young guy from CBS, and we struck up a conversation with him. He was a newscaster, and it was his first time in Vietnam, and he was pretty worried about getting killed. Uh, Anyhow, his name was Dan Rather, and we had a nice conversation with him, and off we flew, and we were flying in a army transport airplane that came from Australia. It was called a Caribou, and I think it was a C-117 was the number for it, but it was a twin engine, a big old twin engine airplane that was renowned for being able to land and take off on short runways. And so we took off, and off we went on the, well, when we got to the first leg in our tour, first I didn't know where we were, and I still can't remember right offhand where we were, but I knew that we got there like in midday, and we were supposed to play that night, but nobody knew exactly where. And so the other guitar player, I think his name was Swerzinski. We called him Alphabet because he had so many letters in his last name. And it was his responsibility to coordinate with the home base. I guess you could say that he was the leader of the band and was responsible for the operational activities. So I've got miles to go before I sleep, and I was bored out of my mind, and it was so hot. And my job, I couldn't leave because I had to stay and guard the equipment. That was my job. And it was so hot. It was miserable. And I remember sitting up on top of that truck thinking to myself, this is pretty freaking horrific. If this is what this tour is going to be like, yeah, I'm going to be in hell for 90 days. And the time passed. The hours passed. And I was so bored. It's not like today, if it had been 2020 back then, I would have pulled out my phone and read a book or done something with that time. As it were, the only thing that I could do was sit with that equipment and smoke cigarettes. Couldn't smoke pot. I was right in the middle of everything, and couldn't smoke, or didn't dare smoke. And the voice comes into my mind and says, Andrew, this can either be the worst disaster of your life or the greatest adventure of your life. What'll it be? What do you choose? Well, so what a stupid question. Of course I want it to be an adventure. Of course it's going to be the greatest adventure of my life. And it turned out to be just that. And it wasn't long after we had that, I had that discussion with the big guy. Here comes Swerzinski. And he's got a driver with him. And we're going to pack up a whole band of gear and take it to the show place, the little enlisted man's club where we were playing. And the tide turned that night, and we had a great show. And the young GIs just went kind of insane. I mean, it was kind of like, well, it's no big thing. I mean, not a great band or anything, and the equipment didn't sound that great, but it was more entertainment than they had there in quite some time. And for some reason, I'm thinking that the name of that place was Tuiwa, where we were playing the first time. I think it was Tuiwa. I can't remember. Maybe the Army Historical Command can tell me, refresh my memory. Well, anyhow, if this were a movie, this would be where we would have a clip of, I can't remember the singer's name either, but I think his name was Anthony. But this is where we would have the song of Anthony singing, "Hold on, I'm coming. Hold on, I'm coming." And I got to sing harmony on that part. That was fun. And anyhow, we're up to almost a half an hour now, so I guess I better call this episode to a close. But the next episode, episode 11, I want to tell you about playing Dong Ha. And Dong Ha was the craziest experience I have ever had in my life playing music. I mean, it was a thrill in every stretch of the word. It was a thrill. And I can't wait to tell you about playing rock and roll music in Dong Ha. And woohoo! That was a great time. So, yeah, playing rock and roll music in the rain and mud, outdoors. Playing music outdoors in the rain. Yeah, Woodstock's got nothing on us. Okay, so I love you all. Thank you for being here. And thank you for subscribing, all 102 of you. And tell a friend, come back often, and watch for a long time. If you enjoy the stories, do me a favor, press the like button. And if you really like the stories, subscribe to the channel so that I can notify you whenever I'm putting up another episode or another silly story on a completely unrelated topic. Oh, which reminds me, on my channel, I want to have a positivity theme like Danny has on his channel. And I'm going to be sharing with you, if you're feeling stressed out, you are probably experiencing a phenomenon where you succumb to 15 common thinking errors. And sounds silly to say, but if you can get control of those 15 thinking errors, you can change your life and conquer your own stress. And so anyhow, God bless you. Don't forget to breathe. Peace out.